The day he moved out, I stayed away. I'll never forget walking back in the house and seeing that my ex had taken the kitchen table that we had actually gone together to specifically pick out the wood planks that made this tabletop, and these tree trunks that were the legs of the table. It was supposed to be where we would have family dinners, because I never really had those family dinners as a child, and it was so important to me for us to have them. But in his moving out, he decided he was entitled to take the table, and I feel like it was a jab at me, to tell me, because the whole reason we made this table together was because it was the family table, and he made sure to take it. But the beautiful part about it was that I walked in, I'm getting chills thinking about it, and I just saw the empty space. There was nothing there, no table. And my son came out of his bedroom and saw me just standing there staring, and he went and took a black folding table, just a little card table we had, and he unfolded the legs and put it in that spot. It's like he was telling me, no, we're still a family. You and I are still here. And that just made me so proud, but it showed me how resilient we were. We were not going to let somebody else determine what we were or who we were. And we were standing strong together there. So that's a chapter I particularly love. Yeah, I'm getting a little sensitive now.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out, or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts, and we can help in this area. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Dana Diaz. Dana, welcome.
Thank you.
It is very good to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. I am the author of a book called Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse, which actually was developed from a journal that I kept in my former marriage that was not very nice. It was an abusive marriage to a narcissist who also had some alcohol addiction issues, and started out, a little rough, but towards the end and even after the divorce, there was some domestic violence. So it's something that I think needs to have some awareness brought to it, because there's not very much justice for victims of abuse, because unless you're walking around with black eyes and visible evidence of what's going on, people don't really understand that there's emotional and psychological, mental health issues, physical issues that you suffer inside as a result of the abuse. So that's mainly the area that I deal with. But outside of that, I am a normal person too. I am a wife, a mother, and a cat mom. And I'm a writer. I have 2 more books coming up, so we'll be checking those out next year. Hopefully they'll be out. And I'm just trying to help people along, because I have come so far, not just in understanding my situation and why those situations happened, but healing from it, because I have come to accept that that's just how it is. And I don't want people to ever be ashamed of what they're going through mentally or physically, whatever struggles they have, because of the circumstances that they have found themselves in during their life.
Well, thank you for the introduction.
Sure.
Very hard-hitting title,
Yes.
and I appreciate you sharing your story. In terms of the setting our conversation up, because many people, I don't know if you found this, but many people use the term narcissist as like an insult. But in terms of how you would separate, let's say, a normal person from a narcissist, how would you describe that person?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that, because as anti-narcissist as I am, narcissists are not all bad people. Typically, on a very basic level, a narcissist is just somebody that needs to feel an extraordinary sense of importance and superiority over others. But where it's used very loosely in society, and there is a stigma to that term, it can be on the low end of just, these are the people that you see on social media, looking amazing, and you can't hate on them because they really do look as good as they think they do. Or we go to the very extreme end, which are the people that will use any tactic, including multiple abuses, to basically evoke other people to make them admire and praise them so that they feel that sense of ego fulfillment. And I always try to explain it very simply, like tumors in your body. You can have a benign tumor that's there, but it's not bothering you. It's just there. And it's still a tumor, but it's not going to do anything to you. Whereas a malignant tumor, it's going to cause you problems. It might kill you, and you have to remove it. So we go from one end to the other, and there's everything in between. But in my experience, unfortunately, I have only dealt with the malignant narcissists that are the ones that will use any or all methods of abuse to get you to submit to them and to control and dominate every part of your life.
So I was very interested to hear you say that about the fact that there can be good narcissists. Is that the
Oh,
word
yeah.
that you use?
Yeah,
And would you
benign,
describe
whatever
them
you
as
call it.
self-centered?
I think that there's a deep, deep sense of insecurity in all narcissists. They have a deep-seated sense of insecurity that, by attaining the admiration and praise of others, they will feel better about themselves. So they're basically looking to other people to project back to them that they're these wonderful people that deep down they don't think they are.
So it comes
But
from
that's
a
not a
place of
bad thing.
insecurity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And at what point would you say it goes from being someone who's maybe a little self-centered and insecure to being someone who is, well, should we call them a bad narcissist?
Yes. I don't know that they go from one end to the other. I think they just, because we as people are so complex. There are people that will cross those lines and cross those boundaries, and people that won't. It just depends on their level of desperation. But it's interesting that the malignant narcissists, these bad ones, they actually don't have any sense of empathy or remorse to understand that they're doing something wrong. So that there's no, I look at like our US prison population. They say over 20% of the male prison population here in the US are identified as narcissists. So and they don't have any concept that they have done something wrong. They actually will turn things around and say that it was their victim's fault, that they got what they deserved, basically. So I think that there's just a sense of, we're calling people with a very, very healthy self-esteem a narcissist, which maybe they are. I don't like to look at the labels so much, because at the end of the day, if you're a terrible person that is intentionally causing harm to somebody, as I always say, you're a POS. I won't say the words out loud, but you're a jerk. It's not right. And there's a moral compass that we all have in our head. And these bad narcissists do not have this moral compass. And if they do, they're not using it because they don't think rules apply to them. They don't think the law applies to them. They know what they can get away with. And even the things that they shouldn't get away with, they do. So they perpetrate, whatever abuses they can get away with on their victims. And then they feel powerful because now they are above the law. They haven't gotten in trouble. Their victim hasn't reported them. So, I think it's just like any other human being. Some of us follow the rules and have a moral compass, and some don't. And it's the same with narcissists.
Would you say it's a lack of empathy problem?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the best example I could give of that in my former marriage, which I discuss in detail in the book, I was having a miscarriage, and it was actually happening, and it was very painful. I was crying. I was asking him for help. He was maybe 10 feet away from me, and he looked at me, looked away, didn't say a word, and turned up the volume on the TV to so that he didn't have to hear me crying and begging him for help. And I asked him to take me to, the hospital, take me to a doctor, and he wouldn't even say a word to me. He just ignored me and left me there. So if that doesn't display the kind of lack of empathy that these people have, I don't know what does. They're
Mm.
cruel.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that you went through that. One of my questions was going to be about at what point did you realize you were dealing with someone like this? I'm guessing by that point you 100% knew that you were dealing with someone who had empathy problems.
You know,
But how far
it
along
was
were you when
early.
when you started to realize it?
It's unfortunate because I was raised by a stepfather who was abusive to me physically and verbally. By the time that I met my ex-husband, I had been diminished to nothing. My stepfather made sure, I mean, he actually told me, he's the king of all narcissists. He would tell me every day during my childhood that nobody would ever love me, nobody even ever wanted me to be born, that he shouldn't have to pay for another man's child, all these terrible things. So I went into the world having no self-esteem and no concept of even knowing why I was even here. I honestly, I was so lost. So it's actually no wonder that I went for the first person that, showed me the tiniest bit of attention and affection. But I knew the second I met my ex-husband, the very first time he walked into my life, he reminded me very much of my abusive stepfather. So I think that there's a sense psychologically that we tend towards situations that are comfortable, even if they're negative and unpleasant. We understand them and we know how to navigate through them, and we just tend towards that, because if you had sent me a very nice young man, I probably wouldn't have known what to do with that. And it sounds terrible to say, but at the same time, I can look back and say, there I was, I think, what was I, 19 years old, young girl, just out in the world, feeling very lowly about myself, being told that my mother didn't love me, my stepfather didn't love me. I was just eager, and I'm going to say the word desperate, for anybody. It probably wouldn't have mattered who it was. So even though he was very standoffish and aloof, and I could sense that he wanted, he felt entitlement and he wanted servitude, I was eager to offer that to him. It almost was the perfect storm, if you think about it. And now that my book has come out and I've talked to other victims of narcissistic abuse in romantic relationships, I have found that many of us have come from childhoods where our sense of who we are has been diminished in some way usually by similar abuses. So it's unfortunate that I saw it right away. The red flags were waving all over. I mean, within 2 to 3 weeks, there was an angry outburst that made me very nervous as to, what he was capable of. And the violent tendencies definitely persisted, and just got worse over time. But I think that's part of the narcissistic abuse, is that they push the bounds little by little. So every time something happens, you feel unsettled. You don't like what happened, but you don't want to upset them. It's not enough to confront them, or at least not for us, because we unfortunately don't want to lose this person, because we think this is the only person that's ever going to possibly love me and ever is going to possibly want to be with me. So the next time something happens, it's just a little bit worse, but it's still not a deal breaker. But see, they know they have gotten away with it and that you haven't left. And when they feel that you're unsettled and you're unsure about them and unsure about the relationship, that's when they come back with what's called love bombing. they tell, oh, it's you and me against the world. You're the one. And, my ex would caress my cheek when we'd watch television, or, bring me flowers. There's all these loving things that happen. So in your mind, you're thinking, okay, they're capable of love. They're showing me love. They're showing signs that they're capable of this. So I just have to make sure that I act in ways that provoke that side of them instead of this angry side. It's sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation where you know how to affect them and they know how to affect you. I mean, that's sort of how the relationship works. So you're trying so hard to get that good side of them, that the bad stuff happens and the bad stuff teaches you what you don't do. There's all these unspoken rules that you learn. So you won't do that again because you don't want to have the consequences. So you keep doing this people pleasing stuff to keep them coming with all the love and the affection and the good times. Because, people think that, like I just went out on the street and found Chucky running around with a butcher knife and disheveled hair. And, no, I didn't. These are people. Even Ted Bundy, the serial killer, from decades ago, was charming and handsome and had, a partner and a daughter at home. And yet he was out raping and killing women every single day. So these are people that they know when to put on their show, and they know how to affect others to get others to like them or feel, that people feel that they're trustworthy, and that, they know how to make things work in their advantage, basically.
It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you sort of blamed yourself for that person's
Oh,
actions towards
absolutely.
you. Is there a point at which that you stopped doing that?
Yes, but it was about 20 years into the relationship. And it's unfortunate because I think that, I mean, I will say this, the day we got married, I will never forget hearing the wedding march playing, and I panicked because I thought, what am I doing? I don't want to marry this guy. This is not who I want to be with, and I'm not right for him. He's not right for me. What am I doing? But we got married and we had a son, and I think once you make that commitment, at least for me, I took it very seriously. And I thought, I have to try to make this work because I knew what I was getting into. And I still, I'm a very responsible person. So I wanted to make the best of it. I wanted to see if maybe I could change him. Maybe I could be better and then he would be better. I always tried to take that angle of, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. So maybe I'll try something different, because if I'm doing something different, he has to react differently. And well, it just never worked. It was always, it was always just, it would blow up in my face. So there was never a point necessarily that I thought, this is it, this is it. But there were multiple times that I questioned why I was there, if that makes any sense. But it is common in abusive situations. They say on average, the victim wants to leave the relationship 7 times before they actually do. And the irony is that I did talk with lawyers 6 times before the final one. The 7th lawyer is the one that I actually did file for divorce with. But it took me about 20 years to get to the point where I just said that this is just not working and I don't want to do this anymore. But the sad thing to me looking back is, all the things that happen, and I can name a million things, but he swung a crowbar at my head once. I ducked. If I hadn't ducked, I wouldn't be here. He was very aggressive and hostile, intimidated, stalked, verbal, just all these abuses. There was a knife incident that he shot a gun outside my bedroom window after, like, all these things would tell a normal person, get out of this relationship. Yet I stayed. I was afraid of him because I had received text messages and emails. At one point, I stopped taking his phone calls because I felt like I had to start getting evidence, because nobody would believe me if I told them that he was saying and doing the things he was doing. So I have texts and emails that he sent telling me, cryptically or outright that he wanted me dead. Um, so I was scared. I was scared that if I left or if I tried to leave or if I filed for divorce, that something would happen. And there were definitely signs of that. And that's why I kept a journal, because I thought if something happens to me and he makes it look like an accident, which I had the idea that that's what he was trying to do in several instances, I wanted to make sure that people would know it was him if they found this journal. So yeah, it's unfortunate that it took me getting physically sick. I went through about a year of testing. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me because I had 24 symptoms that were so random that didn't seem to go together. Some were neurological, some were cardiovascular, digestive, muscular. I everything from brain tumors to lymphoma to MS, were tested and discussed. And it turns out that it was the high level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, that was running through my body for so long at such high levels that my body thought it had to eradicate some sort of a virus, like it would a cancer or something, my white blood cells were killing themselves off. I had become autoimmune, and the scratchiness you hear in my voice is a rare lung syndrome that the doctor says is like having a pulmonary disorder and fibromyalgia all at the same time. And the irony, it's common among victims of abuse. So, when I got sick, I had dwindled down to 93 pounds. I was skeletal. I could barely breathe. I needed a backpack oxygen machine with a mask on my face just to wear to work every day, just to get through every day so I could breathe. But my body was not functioning. And my doctor finally sat me down at the end of 2019 and said, all of your organs have basically, they're shutting down. They're at minimal survival rates. And if you don't get out of whatever situation is causing you so much stress, there might be, terminal consequences. And I'd never thought that stress really could kill you. I've heard the phrase, but I didn't realize it until I was actually living it. And, I remember laying down that night and thinking, is this man worth it? This man who tells me every day he doesn't even like me, this man who tells me he wants me dead, is it worth dying for? Is it not? I want to be alive. I want to live my life. And there were so many things that I hadn't done because he hadn't wanted me to. I wasn't allowed to do anything that brought me joy or success or achievement. I couldn't even have friends. I couldn't even go to the store down the street for cat food without being accused of cheating on him and sleeping with somebody while I was away for 15 minutes. So I just decided right then in that moment, thinking about the things, I had gotten a degree in journalism from university. I wanted to be a writer, but I never did because he didn't want me to. I wanted to travel. He didn't want me to leave the house. He actually told me the house was my prison. So I just said, I have to be done with this. I have to take the risk because one way or another, I'm going to die. And I would rather die trying to get out of this situation than stay in it and let him reap the benefits of walking around and taking people's pity for having a sick wife that he probably wouldn't take care of, because I didn't expect that he would take care of me. He never had. And I just said that that's it. This is it. I'm going to live for me now. And I think it took, unfortunately, getting so sick to realize enough self-respect that, self-respect for my life and for what I wanted and the fact that I did matter, to get out of that. So, I filed for divorce. Things got much more violent afterwards. But it's only been 3 years and a few months. And I'm standing here today, as an example to others that I am healthy now. I don't even know the last time I needed my oxygen machine. I've gained my weight back. I don't have all those random autoimmune flares and reactions that I was having before. And I am a writer. And I'm even remarried to a longtime friend. And it's amazing that, to me at least, that I could have a healthy relationship after living the first 45 years of my life in such terrible circumstances and circumstances that were meant to basically destroy my spirit and any sense of who I was or any capabilities, that I could be standing here and say, wow, look what I have done in such a short time. But if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
Well, congratulations. I feel like you
Thank
deserve
you.
a massive round of applause. So
Thank you. Yay.
well done. And
Thank you
yeah,
so
the
much.
fact that you've gotten your book out, it means that you did become a writer. So I like that positive end of the story.
Yes.
What I do find very beneficial when I speak to someone like yourself is to possibly that there is someone listening right now who is, maybe they're not at the end, but they're considering leaving that person who they
Yes.
either they know is abusive or a narcissist, or they suspect it's the case. So if you had a chance to speak to that person, what would you say to them?
There's so much to say. I am not, unfortunately, I'm not the person that tells people get out, get out, get out, because not everybody can get out safely. And there is planning involved in something like that. But what I would say is this, who you are is important. If I had stayed in my situation and just gone through the motions of life and hoped that I lived long enough, to see my son grow up and move on, that's great. But look at the impact. I don't think we realize the impact we have, not just on other people, but on ourselves, the way we talk to each other, the way we treat each other, but more importantly, how do we talk to ourselves and how do we treat ourselves? It saddens me when I think that I gave myself permission to be in that situation for so long. I recently saw a meme on some social media that said, that dude that's making you cry every day, I'm going to take a guess and say that's not your soulmate, but it's true. If somebody is making you feel that miserable, if you are afraid to say anything, to have an independent opinion or a thought, if you are walking on eggshells because you're trying to avoid consequences, that is a problem. And I am telling you, your life is worth more than that. Your life is worth more. Every word we say matters. I had no idea that here in Podunk, USA, surrounded by cornfields around me, that I could affect other people the way I have with my book or with my experience and by telling my story, but I have. But the beautiful thing about life is we all have a story. Some not as severe, some not as extreme, but somebody out there it resonates, and that impact is very important. So don't waste your time in a situation that is not allowing you to live to your full potential and live the life that you want and deserve. And I'm sorry, that's a lot, but there's a lot to tell somebody in that situation. But I think the gist of it is just to know that you're important. Who that person is saying you are is not who you are. That's who they want you to be for their own self-serving purposes. But who you are is inside of you. So you have to do what I did and say, what do you want? What do I want? Because you know what you want. And it probably isn't what you're living.
It's great advice. Thank you for sharing it.
Of course.
The messages or the examples that you gave are so unjust that it kind of makes me wonder about if you got any closure regarding, an opportunity to tell this person how you felt or something along those lines. Did you ever get that?
I didn't, but I think that I have figured out, these people will take anything you say or do and twist it around to some advantage or to some victimhood, that they experience. So the words are wasted. I think that, like so many people talk about forgiveness and everything. And I say, what I had to do was resolve things with myself and forgive myself. Because at the end of the day, who put herself in that situation? I did. Who stayed in that situation? I did. Was what he did, all these things he did wrong? Yes. But I was the one that put that hypothetical collar and leash around my neck. I was also the one who took it off. And there's a lot of power in knowing that, it was me and I'm going to take responsibility for that. So I forgive me. And I think that definitely writing the book, and elaborating on those experiences that I had put in my journal has helped a lot, because it helped me to understand things. Like, I understand more about him now that we're not even in a relationship, and even things that I didn't realize about myself that I wouldn't have really recognized if I had just had the thoughts in my head or those memories. Because there's something about seeing something on paper and reading it where, even though it was my life and things I experienced, there's an objectivity that takes place when you're reading words versus reliving the memories in your head. And so, you see patterns and you see, behaviors a little differently. But I think that's the beautiful thing about it, is that I have a different perspective now. So do I hate my ex? I should, but I don't. It is what it is. But I learned a lot from it. And I think that's why, despite thinking, there's all these ideas. I don't like when people call themselves broken or damaged after trauma or some toxic relationship. I'm not broken or damaged. I'm affected, absolutely affected. I will stand here and say I have fought the demons of depression and anxiety and hypervigilance, and the triggers are nasty. But I've learned to self-regulate. I have sought help for that. I have practiced it, but isolating myself was not the answer. And that's what we all tend to go to, because we're like, oh, if I just stay away from people and things and social situations, then I'll be okay. But guess what? That's not going to make you better. You're just basically hiding yourself and basically preventing your healing. You have to interact with others. You have to be triggered so that you can pull those tools out of the toolbox that you read about and that you learn and hear about, and put them into practice. Because you're not going to pull a tool out and be, perfectly using it the first time. You have to practice. But the beauty of that is that you can have a healthy relationship romantically. You can connect with people, in friend and family situations, once you can, resolve these things of the past. But I think that there are definitely scars that I have, emotional scars, but they have made me who I am. So do I regret the past? No. Do I wish to go back and say something and warn myself? No, I don't, because I think all those things needed to happen. They needed to be experienced for me to be the person that I am now, and to be able to have the beautiful marriage that I have now, and to be able to help people the way I'm helping them now. So, there are lessons everywhere. It's just how you look at it. I could sit in the corner and cry in fetal position all day long about all the things that have happened to me. And I have done that. I did it for many, many years. I did it even after the divorce. I did it even, I think, about a month ago. I had a good cry because something triggered me, and you know what? The stuff resurfaces. But I knew, I'm like, I just need a minute. I need to pull myself out, get it out, release the tears, release that energy. And then I was okay. And it was like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. And we're all going to falter on that, once in a while, but there's nothing wrong with that. There's beauty in having a soft heart and sensitivity, and knowing who we are and who other people are. And you just get up and move on. But, we're all deserving and worthy and enough for somebody. It's just who you decide to give yourself to, so there's definitely choices in life. We just sometimes make the wrong ones. for reasons that we can understand now that we look at our past. But, we just have to acknowledge it and move forward and make better choices next time.
It's a great answer, and I 100% agree with you. As soon as you said it would have fallen on deaf ears, then, I'm
Oh, yeah.
100% with you on that one. One of your previous answers, you said that you have a son,
Yes.
and you also said about the fact that your stepdad basically told you, you were no good from a young
Oh,
age.
yeah.
And my thoughts on that are that children, if you tell children something, they'll believe you, especially
Oh,
if you're in a
yes.
parental role. And the question is around how you decide to raise your son as a result of how you were raised yourself. Have you got any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's very interesting because by about 12 or 13 years old, I decided I didn't want children at all. And, I just could not fathom bringing up a child and making a mistake. Because there is this idea that's out there. There's some cliche about, you turn into one or both of your parents when you become a parent. And the thought of that terrified me, that I thought, I'm just going to not have children. That way I don't have to hurt another human being, because I could not live with myself if I did that. But, we women, we have this biological clock in us, and everyone was having babies, and I'm going to baby showers, and I thought, oh no, I didn't want a baby. And so, having my son, the beautiful thing about it was that, as scared as I was, I knew what not to do. I knew what not to do because I knew what those things felt like. And that was the whole reason I hadn't wanted to have a child. So I just did the exact opposite. I mean, my son is probably very annoyed at how much I love him. And I know this because, I do embarrass him a lot. He's going to be 21 in a few months. So, he's a young man now and living his life, and I'm very proud of him, of course. But, I am not shy about showing him affection. And, I will put my arms around him and squeeze him tight and tell him I love him. And, he stands there like, oh, get off of me. Like, you don't need to be showing me affection in front of people, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I have made sure not to ever waste an opportunity to tell him that I'm proud of him, or to specifically, congratulate. I'm not trying to give him an overinflated ego, but I want him to know I'm here. But at the same time, I have also let him falter. There are decisions he's had to make in his life, and I am not one of those moms that's going to tell him what to do, because, as I always told him, I'm not going to be around forever, and I needed to give him the tools to be able to live his life well, but to make good decisions. And so that was my, if he ever came to a crossroads in something, I would say, well, if you do this, this might be the potential consequence. If you do that, that might be, and you have to figure out what you want. Do you want to take a risk? Do you want to try that? So I feel like I've given him a good sense of right and wrong and deciphering things, and just, loving him more than anything, and just knowing he's loved. And I think that when I got a divorce from his father, he was 17. So it's not like we could, legally put something into place. He wasn't 5, or, you take him for 3 days. My ex-husband didn't even want any part of our son, unfortunately, and the divorce didn't take financial responsibility at all, wanted no part of guardianship, nothing. But my son said he wanted to stay with me anyway. And I think that spoke to our relationship, because he knows his dad. He knows his dad is unstable and erratic, and all these things. And I'm the consistent and stable one. And I would do anything for him. And I think that's what a child needs to know, to have the safety and security of that parental relationship. Does he still love his dad? Of course he does. That's his father, and he should. And I'm not going to convince him otherwise. And does he want his dad's approval? Yes, of course. I'm 48 years old, and my mother and stepfather don't even speak to me. They haven't for several years, but of course I still want their approval too. I'll never get it, but So I don't judge my son on that. I'm just here. I'm just mom, and I love him. He knows that, and it's been great. And I honestly am very proud of myself for having raised him the way I did, despite where I came from.
Amazing answer. Thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
you did say about the fact that your ex-husband didn't want involvement, but you added unfortunately. And I thought it's an interesting dichotomy because I was going to ask you about the fact that you've got an experience of almost co-parenting with a narcissist, and there's probably some good advice in there as well. But are you saying that you didn't necessarily have to deal with it?
I don't think there is co-parenting with a narcissist. Honestly, my ex never wanted children. That's, something that we discussed before getting married. Like I said, I hadn't wanted children. I hadn't thought I would want a child either. But narcissists are all about themselves. Things actually became much worse after we had our son, because now the baby was the focus of my time and attention and not my husband. And that was it was a very, very big problem. That is when, honestly, things just spiraled downward and very quickly, and it was never the same. But narcissists, in a situation where, you part ways, they are known to use the children as pawns. Of course, they don't want to use their money on their children, and they don't want to spend their time with their children. It's very common, but they will use the children against you. I am just lucky that, I've heard so many stories of narcissists seeking custody of the child or the children just to stick it to, the person who left them. In my case, I'm not sure what his reasoning was, but I'm glad that he didn't fight me. I mean, there was never even a discussion. That's the sad part. It was just assumed that I would take my son, and it was, because the reason that I stayed as long as I did was because I was not going to leave my son in that situation. I absolutely would not leave without him. And I had told my ex many times, I am going to be the best ex-wife ever, because I don't want anything. I don't want any money. You could take all of it. You could take all the stuff, the cars, I'm not going to fight you on anything. I just want to walk out of here with my kid. And I don't care, but the rest of the stuff can be replaced. That is how badly I wanted out.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's shows that priorities are in the right place in my view, because you know
Yeah,
it's important. But
exactly.
I think you've referenced the fact that you've done a lot of self-work, meaning I think there are plenty of examples of people who have been in your position and they haven't been able to make it out, or they haven't done something
Right.
positive as a result of going through that. So how did that happen for you?
I think that I just needed to rediscover who I was, because when you're in a situation, particularly with a narcissist, but I think a lot of abuse victims go through this, um, you lose yourself. You lose yourself in that relationship. But narcissists in particular dictate everything. They dictate who your friends can be, but usually you can't have friends because you can't have influence. You usually don't see your family or have contact with them because, again, they can't even risk that anybody influencing you other than them, because other people will tell you to get out of that situation. You are told, I mean, my ex would tell me he didn't like this particular lipstick that I wore because he said I looked like a whore. He didn't like me listening to that music. He didn't like me reading books. I didn't even have a smartphone until he moved out of the house at the end of the relationship, because God forbid I go on the internet and find information that might sway me to leave or might give me some sense of empowerment. Everything, what we ate, where we went, everything was dictated. So when you have lived like that, like when he did move out, I remember feeling lost. I mean, I was relieved, but I was lost because I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself, because my whole life had been serving him and making sure, constantly serving the situation and gauging the energy to determine what I'm supposed to do next. What does he expect of me? What does he want from me? What's going to make him happy? What's going to keep the peace? And without him there, well, my world revolved around him. So what was there to do? So I had to reach down real deep and kind of dig to say, where's Dana? Where is she? Where did she go? What is she even like? You know? And so I tell people all the time, start with the simple things. Even if you're still in that relationship, don't let this person diminish you so much that you lose who you are. And who you are is in the little things. I'm sure you have a favorite color. You know, mine is red. So I painted my nails red because I like it. And it made me happy to look down and see my nails painted red. And it might be wearing, you know, that dress that makes you feel really good about yourself. Or I'm sure for guys, there, you know, there's stuff you can do for yourselves too. Or, you know, it's just little things, you know, even allowing myself, I joke about this and it sounds silly, but I remember going, it was the first or second night without him in the house. And, you know, he was very specific about what I cooked for dinner. There were rules about that too. And I didn't want to cook dinner. Honestly, I felt like something sweet. So you know what? I had a pint of ice cream. I ate the whole darn pint myself, but I loved it. And I sat down on the couch. I felt like the queen of the house. I'm like, ooh, and I get to sit on the couch and watch what I want to watch, not what he wants to watch. These are silly things that people take for granted, but they don't realize that in an abusive situation, you're not allowed these little indulgences. So I say indulge your whims, because in doing that, you're going to find those little bits of happiness that are like depositing, you know, into your happy jar of your soul. And they're going to remind you who you are. And it's going to get a little easier every day. And then before you know it, you're going to be standing firmly on your own 2 feet, knowing exactly who you are, knowing what you want in the bigger scheme of life, as far as careers and lifestyle and all these things. And that's just going to lead you in the right path, because, you know, like for me, once I saw what I wanted, I couldn't forget about that. I couldn't unsee it. So, you know, you start taking these baby steps, but you have to start with you. And I think just even, you know, rediscovering who you are and allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to, you know, be who you are basically is going to put you in a better mind space to receive the healing that, you know, you're going to try to get. Because whether you go to traditional talk therapy, or I did some writing therapy, even if you don't have money for things like that and you're going on YouTube, there's a lot of people on YouTube that can offer some perspective, or a podcast like this, you know, you're going to receive whatever it is better when you're feeling better about yourself.
Well, the writing and the career preferences are a nice segue back to the book.
Yes.
So, in relation to the book, have you got a chapter which you're particularly proud of?
Oh, probably, there is a chapter towards the end that it's probably the last chapter, and it just talks about it's actually the day it took me months after the divorce to get my ex-husband to move off of our property, because we actually had 2 houses on our property, and that was a complicated situation. But the day he moved out, I stayed away, and my son was there. You know, I just didn't want to make things more awkward, but you know, I'll never forget walking back in the house and seeing that my ex had taken the kitchen table that we had actually gone together to specifically pick out the wood planks that made this tabletop, and these tree trunks that were the legs of the table. It was supposed to be where we would have family dinners, because I never really had those family dinners as a child, and it was so important to me for us to have them. But we tried a few times at this table and they failed. But in his moving out, he decided he was entitled to take the table. And I feel like it was a jab at me, you know, to tell me, because the whole reason we made this table together was because it was the family table, and he made sure to take it to tell me that I'm the one that broke the family up. But the beautiful part about it was that I walked in, I'm getting chills thinking about it, and I just saw the empty space. There was nothing there, no table. And my son came out of his bedroom and saw me just standing there staring, and he went and took a black folding table, just a little card table we had, and he unfolded the legs and put it in that spot. It's like he was telling me, no, we're still a family. You and I are still here. And that just made me so proud, but it showed me how resilient we were. We were not going to let somebody else determine what we were or who we were. And we were standing strong together there. So that's a chapter I particularly love. Yeah, I'm getting a little sensitive now, just thinking about it.
It's a really, really nice. And before you went with the tearjerker, I was going to say it says everything about that person, that they're willing to take that if that's particularly important to you.
Exactly.
And for me, it's kind of like if you have any doubt about whether it's the right decision at that point, then it's sort of like it's helpful in a way because it solidifies, yeah, I'm exactly making the right decision if you're willing to do that. So
exactly.
Congratulations on the book. I think you're a great example of someone who other people can look to and see what they can do if they're in that same position. So well done. If people do want to buy the book or get in touch, where do they go?
Absolutely. Most people are buying the book on Amazon, but you can go to my website, danasdiaz.com. The link for the book is there, as well as links for Facebook and Instagram if anyone wants to follow me, so that they can keep on, updates for the next 2 books that are coming, because I do have a book coming about my childhood, and then a book coming about what happened after the divorce, and, talking about the hiccups that I experienced and moving on, but it all has a happy ending, so it's all good.
Sounds like you're being super productive. So well
I'm
done there. Kind of like the therapeutic exercise of churning out books on your behalf. So I'll be watching. It's great to see. Do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I think the most important thing I like to share with people is just to be kind in general, but be kind to others, be kind to yourself, because the way you talk to yourself and the way you talk to others has much more impact than you realize.
Dana, thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.